Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ground and Pound podcast, the show where, as always, we're hitting you with them elbows of knowledge. And the PFL World Tournament has finally come to the finals. And as always, Carlos and I are going to be here to break down the entire card, starting off in the early prelims, heading to the main event. And as always, we're going to give this man his introduction. For all you Hulkamaniacs out there, brother, I'm joined by Carlos. What's happening, Carlos?
Absolutely nothing, brother.
Absolutely nothing, brother. Are you ready to kick off this card? Starting off in the early prelim opener of Matt Turnbull taking on Tom Pagliarulo. Didn't butcher it. Carlos, who you got in this one?
This matchup with Tom Pagliarulo, he should be able to keep this fight standing, use his reach, work behind the jab. He does throw that front kick that snaps right to the body, kind of a stabbing motion with the ball of your foot. I really like that to keep distance, especially for somebody like Pagliarulo. Only thing is that also may leave you vulnerable for Turnbull to take you down. He's got a lot of submission victories. He's very, very much competitive in the world of jiu-jitsu and all the grappling tournaments. So that's why Tom's got to keep this on the feet. And I would refrain from kicking. Just keep your movement, use the jab, use those long strikes that you use. And I would say that should make for an early night for Pagliarulo because he has been finishing these fights pretty early. Now, Turnbull is definitely a tough fighter. He takes a lot of shots sometimes coming in. Not a lot, but he takes some hard shots coming in. But he's tough through it at this point in his career, but can he take a shot from Pagliarulo? I don't know. Those long arms catching him right at the end of that punch. I'm like, that's exactly where you want to catch it, and that's where Tom tends to put guys out. So I feel like Turnbull, what he's got to do is use his jiu-jitsu. His wrestling seems to lack a little bit. He likes to get you up against the cage, kind of clinch you up there, and start to use his legs to try to trip and sweep you off balance. And other than that, I see that to be a problem because Tom's going to be a lot taller. Very difficult to get those positions, especially if you don't have a solid wrestling base. And I think that's just going to cause the difficulty is Pagliarulo stuff in the takedowns, his movement in and out, and all his lateral movement. And I think he's going to get this done and make it an early night for himself.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Tom Pagliarulo as well. Obviously, the New England Cartel haven't been on the hottest win streak recently, but I think they get one back here with Tom. I think he's definitely going to find the chin here of Turnbull. I think the size and the length and the range here of Turnbull is going to be a little bit an issue. I just don't see how he's going to be able to get on the inside against a guy of 6 foot here at 145 and Pagliarulo. He impressed me with his kicks. I mean, both guys haven't necessarily fought the best level of competition. Let's just throw that out there as well. Sometimes when guys of a low level both fight each other in MMA, anything can happen. It kind of goes out the window just because, they're not that experienced. And to me, the counter right hand is exactly going to be the weapon here that Pagliarulo needs to use. I think Turnbull's kicks are very good. He does kick at all three levels, to the calf, to the body, and to the head. I just think he's going to struggle to really find the range or really get in on the inside here with his hands. I think Turnbull's going to be able to walk him down. Tom is going to be able to walk Turnbull down and really use that range, that counter right hand, and ultimately come up with the victory here. He likes knees in the clinch as well. I think he should stay out of the clinch here against a guy that's much smaller than him. Really use his weapons and just overall swarm him with his size here. But I think the New England Cartel gets one back here. Like I said, I think we're going both with Pagliarulo. And next up, we have Isaiah Diggs taking on Damian Nelson. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I ended up going with Isaiah Diggs. Nelson does have a considerable height and reach advantage over Nelson. I think he's a little bit more technical with the striking, but not dangerous on the feet. And I think that the same speed that Diggs uses to close the space to get his takedowns, he could use that in the future to learn to add like maybe a big overhand with it or a couple of hooks once he gets inside. But for right now, I think he's going to get inside pretty easily. He's going to get those takedowns, get him up against the cage. And I think it's going to be just control from there on for a decision. I don't think it's going to have too many explosive points in this fight. I do think he's just going to probably try to control him, keep his weight on top of Nelson, and probably throw some short shots in the clinch on the ground, and like I said, work his way to a decision. So I got Diggs.
Yeah, I'm digging it, man. I'm going with Diggs as well. I wasn't that impressed with Damian Nelson. I thought he kind of looked like he sucked when I watched tape study with him this week. And training out of the Longo Gym MMA, struggles with pressure. That was what I wrote with emphasis when I watched all of his fights. When you see his opponent walking him down, he really seems to struggle going on the back foot, being backed up. He just can't really get a lot of his weapons going. He seems very, very flat-footed to me as well. Doesn't throw a ton of kicks. He really likes to just throw their hands and kind of keep things in boxing range. And I just don't. I'm just not really that impressed with him, to be honest with you. He just doesn't look anything special. Whereas you look at Diggs, although 5-0, not necessarily for a high level of competition, he is a very short, stocky build. He does come forward with the pressure. He will mix in takedowns. He has a nice little sort of blast double, get to a body lock. He's decent. Obviously 5-0, but not necessarily the highest level of competition. So I think this, in terms of, stage on the PFL, is probably the biggest fight that he's had. And I do think that Nelson could pull off the upset because he has fought the higher level of competition out of the two. But I just think Diggs here is just going to find a way to get on the inside with the shorter, stockier build, mix in takedowns, throw the overhand right. And I just think that the pressure is going to be a little bit too much here against Nelson. He seems to struggle with that in tape study. So give me Diggs here to get it done. And next up, we have Sharik Shields taking on Nick Meck. And I'm going to kick this one off here. I'm going with Shields. I think both of the guys, obviously, we've seen in the past in the PFL, both guys very wrestle-heavy game plans. Starting off here with Nick Meck. He trains out of Marathon MMA with guys like Trey Ogden, Garrett Armfield. Obviously known as a gym that comes up with very good game plans. Very pressure-heavy style wrestler. But out of the two, I'd have to give that edge to actually Shields. I think he's the much bigger, physically stronger wrestler. Nick Meck will blast kicks. His striking is not great. Obviously, he wants to look to wrestle. And his favorite submission that you'll see, who will go for a lot of Kimuras, whether that be looking to sweep, whether that be in top control, side control, whatever, he always tries to look for that Kimura. He'll have a really tough time if he does try to go for the on Shields. Shields is a very big, sort of brutish guy for this division at 170. And again, Shields likes to look to wrestle himself. The thing with him is, and what I was kind of surprised about in his last fight was, I saw in his fights that he comes out very aggressive early in round one. He does have some submissions. He does come out early and aggressive to try to get the finish. But I'm surprised his gas tank lasted. So obviously that's something he's worked on, up until his last fight. He was able to go a lot longer in the fight. I looked on tape and he seems to really slow down prior to that fight, but he seems to be able to go the distance now. I'm going to pick Shields here to get it done, but I wouldn't be surprised if Meck pulls off the, I don't want to even call it an upset because I think this one could go either way. It's just going to be dependent upon if both wrestlers here decide to stand and strike, who touches the chin. I mean, Meck is a little bit faster on the feet, I would say, but both guys' striking isn't all that. I just think Shields is a little bit more aggressive, so I'm going to lean ever so slightly to him here. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I ended up going with my brother here, Nick Meck. What I liked about him, what we saw the last time, is yes, he can wrestle, so I think he might be able to nullify a lot of Shields wrestling, and I feel that he's a little bit more the athletic of the two. So I think he's going to be picking up stuff as he goes, the weeks, the months of training, and I think maybe he might land some overhand wild flush. Wrestlers start to add that to their repertoire, and I think maybe that's how he might get that done. Might be able to hurt him a couple times throughout the fight, get the decision, but I feel that he's going to land something in between that fight. So I'm taking Nick Meck.
Dissension here to get into the early prelims, so we'll see if the brother of Nick Meck here can get this one right. And next up, we have Nathan Kelly taking on Frederic Dupras. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I ended up going with I'm going to go with Dupras. Dupras. Anyway, with Frederic Dupras. Kelly is, I think, the more well-rounded of the two in comparison, but I just feel that Dupras is looking more for the finish, and a bit wild when looking for takedowns, but I don't feel like Kelly can exploit the openings that he has. And I feel that just the pressure and Dupras, whatever, tenacity is kind of going to like just kind of force him to have to fight, whether it's going to force him to make a movement he doesn't want to, or just, catch him on his back foot. I just feel that the pressure is probably going to push him back. Now, I understand. I think it's Kelly that fights another one out of SBG, but and he probably goes against some animals all the time. But I just feel like sometimes in the ring, that pressure from what I've seen before, he doesn't seem to have a way to nullify that. And I think he's going to find a way to pressure Kelly, probably like push the pace and uh, get this to the ground and possibly get a submission.
Yeah, all 8 of Dupras, however you want to pronounce it, all 8 of his wins do come via submission. So a very slick jiu-jitsu practitioner. I think it says here, nasty. I've got written in my notes here, nasty guillotine. 5 of his 8 wins coming via guillotine. And when you talk about the guillotine in his last fight against Gabriel Braga, I actually wrote here as well. He had him in one of those oh shit guillotines, where as Volkanovski would say, it's one of those ones where you're surprised the guy doesn't tap. And that was pretty much the tale of that whole fight. I think he really has a nice squeeze on his guillotine. I do think that Carlos is right when he says Nathan Kelly is definitely the more well-rounded fighter here. I think in terms of the striking, I think Kelly's definitely the more natural striker. I think Kelly's the more natural finisher overall. I do think Dupras is probably a little bit more sub or bust. And to me, Kelly is a little bit more athletic out of the two as well. But I'm also going to pick Dupras here. I don't like what I've seen from Kelly. A lot of his wins, out of his 11 wins, they've come against very low-level competition. When he's had a big step up in competition here, he's really sort of not hit the mark. And his last 2 losses both coming via submission as well. I could see him, if he keeps this one on the feet and he just kind of pitter-patters and fights on the outside and really just makes this a back-and-forth kickboxing affair, I think he'll win this one no problem. If he decides to mix in any grappling, which is definitely what I think he'll do, I think he's getting subbed. I think he's getting tapped. So give me Dupras, however you want to pronounce it, to get the submission victory here. And if we do a best bets video, we might be looking at that this week. And next up, we have Kyle Driscoll taking on a name that I'm definitely going to struggle to pronounce. I've seen Kadimagomaev. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I'm actually gonna go with Driscoll on this one. Sometimes when you see some type of Mega Madoff, you're gonna go with that guy because you believe he's gonna keep it on the ground. But Kadimagomaev, what I see here is that Driscoll, I think he can match the talent of. I'm gonna go with Hussein here. Is that it? Hussein?
Yeah, Hussein.
Okay.
Yeah, something.
I'm gonna go with that. So I'm gonna go with I think he can match the talent of him. And what I mean by that is I think the wrestling, I think he can match it. I think he can match him in the striking. I just think he can use that to keep it where he wants this fight to take place. And I believe he would want it to be a little bit more standing than anything. And I feel that he can keep him at distance with some of the reach. And he can. I don't really know how to work that, but I'm gonna try it again. As Kadimagomaev can work enough stand up just to get close enough to get a takedown. But I think that Driscoll could probably stuff it, probably get back to his feet and do a little bit more damage there. So I think he can keep the pace of this fight where he wants it to be. So I'm gonna go with Driscoll.
Yeah, I've not been that high on a Kadimagomaev, or however the hell you say his name, the guy with the Russian name. You who know who we're talking about, Hassan. I've not really been that impressed with him. Very technical kickboxer. I do like his striking, but I'm not really impressed with his wrestling. When he's kind of wrestling early in fights, he tends to slow down. He can't really keep that kind of pace going for 3 rounds. Technical kickboxer, like I said, very nice straight right hand, very fast high kick, will kick to the body as well, which I do like. And like I said, he will mix in the wrestling as a nice single leg. But when you watch some of his fights, you'll see that he gets the takedown early in the first round, and then the second and third round, he's just sucking air. And Kyle Driscoll, he did have a fight on the Contender Series, but wasn't able to get a contract. I think he won by decision. Unfortunately, didn't get the contract. Dana and the boys like the finishes. He does have a nice high kick. He pressures heavy on the feet. And he will mix in takedowns as well. He has competed in combat jiu-jitsu as well, so obviously working on his grappling. And he's aggressive on top when he does get fights to the ground. He will throw ground and pound to soften his opponent up to look for the submission. But I'm just going to go with Hassan here. I think that the striking is going to be very back and forth. I do think that Hassan is a little bit more technical. I do like Kyle Driscoll here. I think that if he's a big underdog, that it might be worth a little sprinkle on him because Hassan, it just doesn't look all that. And I do think that when the fight hits the ground, if Hassan takes it there, that he might get a little bit tired and Driscoll can take over. But I'm just going to trust that his striking is going to be enough. And if he does want to mix in takedowns, hopefully his gas tank holds up. And next up, we have Sergio Cossio taking on Jakub Kaszubi? Carlos? Who you got in this one?
I'm actually taking Kaszuba in this one. I think Kaszuba on the feet cannot match the brawling style that Cossio brings on the feet. Cossio will bring a lot of pressure and he'll swing kind of wild, a lot of looping hooks. But what I do feel is that Kaszuba's kickboxing experience, he will be able to use just enough to close the distance to get this to the ground. As long as he can get close enough to clinch you up against the cage, he's going to find a way to get you to the ground, at least against Cossio he will. And he's done that in previous fights, and to see just how unskilled Cossio is on the ground, and once he's down, he has very little chance of getting back up. Kaszuba's been very dominant in his last two fights on the ground, and I feel that he can use that to his advantage. Now, to say it's going to be easy to get him down, I don't know. But if you time someone that's wild, that's coming in striking with their head over their knees, you should be able to get this down to the mat at some point in the fight. And I think once it's there, it's just going to be control, and Kaszuba gets the W that night.
Yeah, this one's weird to me when I watched it on tape study for both of these guys. Both of these guys are kind of known for kind of not necessarily slow starts, but getting beaten up, dropped, almost finished, and then they come back later on in the fight and get the victory. I know that Jakub, or whatever his name is, he's Polish. He's 14-0, but when you go back and watch his fight against Connor Hughes, I believe it is, he's getting beaten up in the first round, gets dropped by a front kick, and you kind of think it's all over, and then he comes back, he shows his toughness. So both of these guys very, very tough. I mean, Cossio as well, Mexican fighting spirit, known for his brawling style, known for his comeback in fights. He had a very nice mounted triangle after being beaten up for 3 or 4 rounds, and I believe it was a 5-round event, 5-round fight in one of the fights that I saw. And he manages to come back and get that kind of Hail Mary submission. So both guys, don't count them out, even if the one guy drops the other guy, or, one guy seems to be on the ropes. But Cossio, to me, very gritty brawler. Like I said, Mexican toughness. He likes to throw shots at kind of coming from weird angles. He just wants to make it a brawl. He wants to make it a scrap. He tends to fight sort of almost like he wants to be able to just make the fight, where he gets punched and that kind of gets him going. He doesn't look like the kind of guy that comes in and thinks, I'm going to fight behind a jab or fight with a game plan. He just kind of needs to be hit, I think, sometimes in order to get going. And he's very opportunistic with his submissions. He's not necessarily looking to always just take fights to the ground, but if his opponent wants to take it there, he can find the submission if need be. And when you talk about Jakub, I mean, to me, again, slow starter, very tough. Very nice kickboxing, I will say, when he does get his hands and feet going. And he can be a little bit low volume. And one of the things I didn't like as well is that he does tend to duck his head as well from time to time. So can catch him with a kick. Haven't seen too many kicks from Cossio. And to me, I also wrote in my notes here, it's weird to me that he's 14-0. Like when you watch his fights, you're surprised that he's undefeated at this point. But both guys, like I said, comeback kings. But I'm going to go with Jakub here to get this one done and make it 15-0. I don't really like Cassio's skill set. He's more tough and brawling and gritty. I think Jakub is a little bit more technical. I think that he gets it done here. And next up, we have Jordan Newman taking on Islam Abdul Baset. Carlos, who you got in this one?
This one was a little rough because Jordan Newman, he looks good. I think he's the more athletic of the two. He looks the more athletic, and he's a little quicker. He's obviously like the better wrestler out of the two. And, he's learning new stuff fight to fight. And he's always picking up new techniques. Now, Abdul Baset, I think, in all honesty, I think Jordan Newman should be able to beat him. But I feel that there's something that Abdul Baset can bring to the table that Jordan obviously hasn't seen before because he does have the experience um, one up in this fight. And I feel that there's something he can do to force Newman to get a little tired because in his fights he hasn't been gassed. He's actually used a little bit more striking in his fights than he has wrestling. And in this fight, he's gonna have to use the wrestling because on the feet, Abdul Baset is going to attack him. And Abdul Baset is not that bad on the ground either. You know what I mean? He's been doing this for a long time. I'm sure he's got a lot of tricks, and I'm sure he can get up off the mat if once he gets taken down. I just feel that Jordan is a better athlete. He's quicker. Um, Although Abdul Baset looks like a tank, he looks like an animal, but I do feel that he's a little sloppy in a lot of his movements, whereas Jordan seems to be a little bit more coordinated. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to win the fight, but that does mean you have a better chance technically of getting to point A than from point A to point B than your other opponent. So I'm going to go with Jordan Newman here. I understand, like, he's still fairly new at 7-0, but I think he can do enough. And if the stand-up's not going his way, I think he can get it to the mat and at least control Baset and get the victory.
Yeah, when I looked at the odds for this fight, I thought it was kind of crazy, especially after doing tape study, that Jordan Newman is such a huge favorite here. It doesn't even make sense to me. And like Carlos said, Jordan Newman, very credentialed wrestler, two-time Division III national champion wrestler. So the guy can wrestle. There's no doubt about that. But this ain't wrestling, people. We're not talking about the Hulk, brother. We're not talking about the WWE, brother. We're talking about the real, the real MMA here in the PFL final. But to me, he's just very stiff on the feet. Like, when you watch his striking, you can tell that's not his natural skill set. He's very sort of, like very rigid. Nothing seems to flow. There's no sort of, confidence in what he's doing. He's very uptight. You can tell. Throws one shot at a time. And I'm right there with you, Carlos. I think he needs to mix in the wrestling here against Baset. Baset was taken down and controlled against Mike Shipman. Mike Shipman is an absolute huge middleweight. The guy fights at 205 as well. So the fact that he was able to take him down doesn't necessarily bother me at all. I think the skill and the technique of Newman, I think if he wrestles, he'll be able to get the takedowns. Hopefully, he should if he's going to be this big of a favorite. Because if this fight plays out on the feet, Baset, one thing he does carry is a lot of power. The guy's built like an absolute fire hydrant. And he swings looping shots, and he could definitely catch Newman. Very poor level of competition out of that 16-3 record that Baset has got. And like I said, very muscle-bound build. I think that would wear on the gas tank. If there was a lot of wrestling involved, it would put a lot of lactic acid in the arms of Baset here. I think that would be the best path to victory. But if Jordan Newman decides he doesn't want to wrestle, then this is anyone's game. For Baset could definitely find the chin. Baset could definitely make this a tough fight, but going to go with Jordan Newman to get it done. I think he wrestles. I think he gets the win here.
I know you say Newman is a little stiff in his striking, but even in his stiffness, he's still so much quicker off the first movement than Abdul Baset is. So that's why I'm like, he could still sting him at any time. And in his previous fights, whenever he hits people, he gets a pretty good result. Like, they don't handle it very well. So I'm like, okay, I understand he's stiff. That's why I say he's still learning. But I go, even if Newman were to throw a shot, he could probably end up putting Abdul Baset on Queer Street. So it's like, on one hand, if Newman ends up getting tired because he's just not used to the rounds and somebody of that caliber, I could see Abdul Baset, pushing the pace and getting the decision or getting him out of there. Newman, I don't know if he can control Abdul Baset on the ground the way Shipman was able to, because Shipman's a very large human being, as we were talking about. And he'll set his weight down, he'll set his hips down and control your hips and your shoulders. Newman actually has not done that in any of the fights yet, but can he do that? Can he keep you there? Now, I know he could mat return you because that's just wrestling, but can he control you at this stage in his game? I don't know. And that's why when you said the odds, I just looked at it and I'm like, that is absolutely insane.
Fucking
But
crazy, right? When I saw that, I couldn't believe it. After watching tape and I watched the stiff arm Jordan Newman striking, I was like, "There's no way. Just stay away from that, people." But this fight, I'm interested in. I'm not gonna lie. After doing a bit of tape study, we have Adjoudj taking on Yavaz Landu, and I'm gonna pass this one to you, Carlos. Who you got in this one?
I took Adjoudj. Should be able to match Landu's ground attack. And on the feet, when Adjoudj actually settles down, because sometimes he goes at a little bit of a frantic pace in some of the fights I've seen. And it's probably just because the level of competition, he can just blow right through people. But I think this is a bigger step up for him. And I think that when he slows down his technique a little bit, because he's going to be quicker off the first movement, I feel that he's going to be able to pot shot all night against Lando if he wanted to. Now, I do feel that even though he comes from a credentialed kickboxing background, I feel that his ground game, he's forcing himself to use it in his fights and he's more comfortable with it. So I think he's pretty relaxed in using that. And he's got a couple of submission victories as well. So I'm going with Adjoudj, and I think he can actually get this done. He is training, with the guys over there at SBG too. So he's learning to get more confident in his grappling all the time. So, um, and he fights that way as well. So I think he's got the upside in this.
Yeah, while I break this one down, check out the odds for this one as well. So we could talk about that after this breakdown. But I'm also going with Adjoudj here. He impressed me. When I watched him on tape study, I was disappointed I didn't get to see him fight in his last one. Like Carlos said, trains out of SBG Ireland, 28-3 professional kickboxing record. And I'm very high on this kid. I think this guy is very, very good. He's shown an ability that obviously he's a kickboxer that's shown that he can mix in the wrestling, mix in the grappling. In his previous fight against Bruno Motis, he pretty much took that guy down and wore him out with the wrestling back control. Took his back a few times, got the hooks in, tried to get the submission, and later on in the fight was able to knock the guy out once the fight went back to the feet. The guy is very impressive to me. He's shown an ability to really be a complete mixed martial artist and do it all over wherever this fight takes place. And to me, Landu, 38 years old, undersized in this matchup, 6 foot, taking on 5'8". The guy likes to fight on the outside. He's happy to bounce around on the outside. Landu will shoot in for takedowns. He has a nice double leg. But I don't think that the grappling is going to be able to get going here and be able to save Landu here from Adjoudj. I think the size, I think the grappling improvements that he's made over at SBG are going to be too much. And to me, with Landu, he's one of these guys that kind of bounce. He's happy to bounce around on the outside. And I just think that's going to play into the hands and the visual here for Adjoudj to be able to get his striking going, kind of, force the striking and being able to stay at range, land kicks. Ultimately, I just think wherever this fight goes, I just like Adjoudj. And I think it's kind of crazy. And I'm right in saying that Adjoudj is the underdog here, right, Carlos?
No, I think he's a favorite.
I could have swore I saw he was the underdog. I'm not
Yeah,
100%
yeah,
sure.
he's the favorite in
Oh,
this
he's the
one.
favorite? Oh, forget
So,
it then. Doesn't matter. I thought he was
yeah.
the underdog. But either way, I like him this week as the favorite. I think he gets it done here. I'm not that high on Landu. I think that his time has come. I think that he's undersized in this one. And ultimately, I think the kickboxing and Muay Thai style of Adjoudj with the wrestling to fall back on. He's impressed me. Very high on this kid. Could have swore he was the underdog. But in this one, I'm going to ask you in a minute when you check the odds as well. We've got Jesus Pinedo taking on Mavled Khaybulaev. I'm not sure how you pronounce that name, but this one surprised me as well when you check at the odds. Carlos, who you got in this one?
Let me see what these odds are right here. Yeah, that is surprising now that you say that. And the funny part is I'm going with the odds on this, and I'm going with Pinedo.
Mm.
And one of the reasons I'm doing that is he did show takedown defense against Bubba Jenkins, and Bubba Jenkins is another decorated wrestler. I think he's Division II wrestling All American, but what has shown me is that he can actually defend some takedowns. And what to compare Khaybulaev's takedowns and Bubba Jenkins are completely different. Jenkins wants to get you up against the cage and just get like a body lock and pull you off and take you down. Whereas like Khaybulaev, what he's going to do is he's going to shoot from outside, probably go get you in a double, or he's probably going to get a single and hit the corner. And he hits the corner sharp, and then he takes his opponent right down the way you're supposed to. Very technical. And he can also get you up against the cage and get you off your feet. So I don't know what he's going to do in open space against Khaybulaev to stop that. But what I do know is the length that he brings to this is also going to cause a problem of difficulty. Now, Khaybulaev has been fighting guys short, tall, and still taking everybody down. But I do feel that the length is going to give him a little bit of a problem. And Pinedo striking, Khaybulaev also likes to play the stand-up game for a little bit, which I think is going to be a problem because it's only going to take one shot from Pinedo to put him on Queer Street or probably put him out. Now, it doesn't matter how tenacious you are. You train with the Khabib guys over there in Dagestan. If he hits you, he's going to hurt you. So if I were Khaybulaev, I'd keep going for takedown after takedown and looking for submission and try and just keep chaining everything back and forth. And that's the only way he's going to succeed in this fight. But if he wants to play the stand-up, and if Pinedo can get back to his feet when taken down or stuff the takedowns, I think Khaybulaev's going to have a problem. So I'm pulling for Pinedo, and that's funny that I just saw the odds. I can't believe he's actually the favorite. So.
Yeah, I thought I was going to be on a world of my own here with Jesus Pinedo. I'm picking him as well. I think that he's impressed me over the course of his career so far, watching him inside the PFL. Great takedown defense. When people have got a single leg on him, he does a good job of stuffing the head. The guy has got great balance, and he's really shown an ability to defend takedowns. And I think that that's going to be put to full test here against, how did you pronounce that? Khaybulaev? How did you pronounce that?
Khaybulaev.
Khaybulaev, yeah, obviously training over with Team Khabib over there, Dagestani wrestler style, powerful striking, likes to throw the overhand at at times to disguise the takedown. He'll throw that overhand as a little bit of a decoy there to get you worried about it before he shoots in for the double legs. And I mean, we saw in one of Movlayed's previous fights when he fought against Jeremy Kennedy that Jeremy Kennedy gave him a very back and forth fight, and especially with the striking. And if he's doing that against Jeremy Kennedy, he's going to struggle against Pinedo. Pinedo hits very hard. He's got very good timing on his shots, very nice check hooks. The guy's got great calf kicks, which I think will be a great weapon for him to light up the legs of Movlayed as he stands there and kind of bounces in and out. And I just like Pinedo in this one. I thought that he might be the underdog. I thought maybe a little bet on him, but turns out he's the favorite. People see the same thing I do and Carlos does, but I think he stuffs the takedowns and ultimately here wins either a decision or maybe finds a late knockout with the hands, but I think Pinedo's going to get it done here. And that brings us to the main event of the evening. If you're enjoying the content here on the Ground and Pound podcast, hit that like and subscribe button as we break down Thad Gene, the Silverback Nation, taking on Logan Storley, the All-American. Carlos, who you got?
I'm going to go back to the same thing I said with Khaybulaev. I think one of the only things Storley is going to be able to do is keep chaining takedown after takedown after takedown. Now, I know he's another decorated wrestler as well. And when you look at his record, there's a lot of TKO finishes. But like we explained before, he gets a lot of ground and pound finishes. I don't believe he's going to be able to just keep Gene down to be able to throw those little short shots and those little elbows to get the stoppage, because I feel that Gene is going to scramble and get back to his feet. Now, he can get up technically. We've seen that. He's done his technical stand-up. But the problem is it's demoralizing every time you get back to your feet. Will Storley be able to take you back down? And then it just takes the wind out of your sails. And that can bring you down over time. But I think Thad Gene can actually stuff some takedowns. And in stuffing the takedowns, you've got to get in close. And I think that's where he's going to pose a lot of threats to Storley. He's big, he's strong, he's powerful, and he's quick. And that's something Storley's not. So he could time something, land a quick shot, probably sting Storley, and change the bout from there. Storley could also just hold him down, but I don't think that Gene is just going to stay in a position. Normally, Storley has stays in half guard, and he ends up raining down some elbows and some hammer fists. I don't think Gene will I don't think he'll accept that position. So I think he's going to do everything to get out of that. Now, the other reason is I think he has good cardio. I haven't seen him get incredibly tired or gassed yet, even in the what was that guy's name? Was it Jason Jackson fight? Sorry,
Yep.
I think I want to make sure I said that right. Okay.
Yep.
In that fight, because he had to do a lot of takedown defense and he had to use a lot of movement in that. So I think he's going to use that same movement against Storley, and I think he's going to land a shot and probably. I don't think he's going to put him out, but I think those are the shots in each round that are going to make the difference for him getting the nod in this.
I was interested to see who you were picking on this one, and Silverback Nation will not be disappointed. The Ground and Pound podcast making it 2 for Thad Jean here. I do think Logan Storley, obviously wrestle heavy game plan. 119, 27 record as a 4-time All-American. Only 5'9", 170 pounds. That does have to be mentioned. The reach and the size here of Thad Jean going to make it tough for Storley to get the wrestling going here. And I literally wrote in my notes here, I said Storley will need to control this fight on the ground for multiple rounds at a time in order to beat Thad Jean here. I think Thad Jean's going to be able to win most of the striking exchanges. And as Carlos mentioned, Thad Jean is a very powerful striker, very athletic. And I will say this is probably one of his biggest tests to date in the PFL. And he's talked a lot about being in the moment and having that belief that he's meant to be here. And, now 27, the kid's not a kid anymore. The guy is really kind of developing into, a star that the PFL has really brought up. I watched a lot of his early fights inside the PFL. And I think that he's honestly been somebody that's always been on my radar. He's always been on the PFL's radar as a potential star. So I'm not surprised that he's here fighting in this main event here against Logan Storley. And I think he gets it done. I think the striking is going to be too much for Storley. I think he's going to obviously look to wrestle, but he's going to struggle. I did write here in my notes as well that even Jackson tried to take Thad Jean down. He wasn't able to control him. He able to get the takedown, but ultimately Thad Jean popped right back up. I think Storley's just going to try to do the same thing, but he's just not going to get the control. I think Thad Jean's going to be able to time a shot, hurt Storley. Storley tends to slow down in fights, especially late into the second and third round because of that wrestling style. And I think Thad Jean carries power late into fights. And I do think that he kind of Jean tends to lose a little bit of his pop as the fight goes on, just purely because he's, he's very explosive. So a little bit of that little pep in his step, that young sort of energy kind of goes away. But with the range of or the length of his arms and the length of his limbs, he can really generate a lot of power. And I think that he catches Storley here. So give me Thad Jean here to get it done in the main event. 2 for Thad Jean. Silverback Nation, I think you're going to get your wish here with your guy winning in the final here. And that's all we got time for. And we got to let you know what's coming on the channel. We got the full card breakdown here. It was going to be Tatsuro Taira taking on Albazi. Unfortunately, that fight has dropped. So now we're going to have Taira taking on, I believe it's Park. And also we're going to have the dog of the week, my favorite betting underdog, full highlight reel tape as we always do for that whole card, for that UFC fight night. And Carlos, before we leave the people, what do you want to say to the people?
Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed the breakdown here. And before we go, I'd like to say I can't believe Thad Jean's actually the favorite against Storley. That's a slap in the face to Storley, but I could see why. And hope you guys enjoyed the content, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
And to keep up with the Hulk Hogan theme, what you gonna do, brother, when the Ground and Pound podcast runs wild on you? Peace.